Hello, my friends. Let's start this one from Porkrovsk Situation. As you might see, there is the attempt of the Russian army to encircle Ukrainian forces in the settlement and also in Mirnograd. Multiple of the Russian small groups already infiltrated Pokrovsk almost fully. However, there is also presence of the Ukrainian army groups as well. Kind of the similar picture goes for Mirnograd, where Russians also were spotted. Yeah, Ukrainian army now tries to slow down all of those Russian attacks, but it is evident that very soon Ukraine will have to leave Mirnograd and Pokrovsk. I would say that Ukraine should already withdraw the forces because this bottleneck, it is getting very tight. Well, still there is a wide gray area, so Russians cannot establish their control over Pokrovsk or Mirnograd. But eventually it's gonna happen. Russia attacks there with groups of maximum 3 soldiers. They reach some specific building in the settlement, accumulating forces, and then they act from it as from the bridgehead. That's the usual Russian tactics, and actually in the urban environment it's easier for them to operate with this scenario. Especially then Ukraine doesn't have the huge presence of the infantry in this pocket. It's not like Bakhmut, where Ukraine got thousands of the forces in the settlement. But back then, the drones were not that actively used. Now it is physically not possible to keep the forces in the settlements with the large groups. Absolutely not possible. Drones changed everything, and this line, yellow, red, or blue sometimes, well, it is not constant. As you may see, it's boiling. This hour we have this picture, after some time, also hours, it's gonna be different, so no one may tell you by 100% what is actually happening out there. But every analytic may confirm that the Ukrainian army was not encircled in Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. And what Russian officials are saying, and Putin today again, he proposed a few hours ceasefire to let international press to attend Pokrovsk and Mirnograd to see the actual terrible situation for Ukrainians out there. Like what he is even talking about. Even Russian military bloggers themselves, they say that the Ukrainian group has not yet been encircled. Yes, there is the probability, but for this hour, no. And Russian media themselves, they cannot access Pokrovsk or Mirnograd because it is physically not possible for them to go to those areas. It's the battle zone. Well, Putin just believes in this Gerasimov's nonsense that was reported to him, which is crazy. And actually that explains Russian convoy attacks recently, which happened in this direction and also in the south, where Russia lost all of their vehicles. It is simply misunderstanding of the Russian political and military command of the current situation on the front lines. And the local Russian commanders, they misrepresent the situation, telling that they have some of the success, then de facto they don't have it. But finally, they'll have to prove it, and they use all of the available resources to gain some of the ground, but sometimes it doesn't work. That Ukrainian army also has this problem that some of the local commanders, they also tell lies about the situation. And if we speak about Pokrovsk, it looks like the command of the 32nd Brigade responsible for defense of the southern part of Pokrovsk, it gave the wrong information to Syrsky. Well, at least several of the Ukrainian channels, they wrote about that one, but I would put doubt on that because I don't have proofs, like actual evidence, reports. For now, those are the messages, but from kind of the respectable sources. Yeah, sometimes I also speak about the issues in Ukrainian army, but Ukraine now goes on counterattack towards Shakhova. You see, Ukraine dealt with Kucherev Yar, and now it's the turn for this Russian group, which was encircled, to basically surrender or to leave somehow to Mayak, but for that they need to cross the gray area. So it was yesterday, it is today. You see that Russians a little bit propelled towards Vladimirivka, the village that buried lots of the Russian tanks and armored vehicles, but it was just tiny little advancement here. Just look, yesterday, today, with all of those attempts, this ground gain, come on. So this northern part, yeah, I'm very surprised that Ukraine was so effective with this counterattack operation, deploying the best forces, of course, at the proper time. So it was a defeat of Russian army. But finally, Russia has now changed its focus for Pokrovsk a little bit to the south, and they want to gain the ground in Krasny Liman and also maybe to advance to Rodinske. Well, if Russians get to Rodinske, I would say it's like finally over of Pokrovsk and Mirnograd for Ukraine. Even now, I would say that for Ukraine, it is better to withdraw the forces. I already mentioned that. Mainly because of the drones and Russian artillery. You may see that just 3 kilometers left between the gray zones, and Russians may just focus their fire on this bottleneck using artillery, aviation, and drones. So for Ukraine, it will be very, very hard to get out from Mirnograd and from all of those villages in this sector. Yeah, including Pokrovsk also. So yeah, for this agglomeration, I would say it's mainly over. Ukraine will lose it in the coming weeks in a best case scenario or coming days. But still, it was holding for more than a year, yeah? Russians stuck there in Pokrovsk, and the only way how Russians were capable to get it is creating this big bridgehead. Well, it helped them, but at the same time they lost thousands of the soldiers for 2 of those big settlements. The last time Russia actually got a big settlement under control was in Avdiivka. Remember, Zaluzhny left his position after Avdiivka was occupied, or during the occupation of Avdiivka, it's better to say. But still, Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, they are not that big settlements as Kupiansk. The situation in Kupiansk is also critical. I don't know, Zelensky said that they were capable to stabilize it. I'm not sure. Russia many times tried to advance to Kupiansk, and only with the help of this bridgehead across the river they were capable to do it from one side. Near Sinkivka, Ukrainian defense was really strong, but here, no, it was really weak. Russians landed and they went southbound. It was relatively easy for them. And now there is the problem for entire Ukrainian group in all of those villages. So Ukraine should withdraw them right now. Also, yeah, I understand that for Ukrainian military command it is not that popular move, but it should be done to save our soldiers, and maybe they may even take some of the vehicles with them until it is too late. Alright, as for the good news, we have one coming from Konstantinivka. There Ukraine went in a counterattack, and according to my information, I hope it will be confirmed later on, that Ukraine liberated this village. It is right at the border between Ukraine and Russia. Konstantinivka is located in the northern part of the Sumy region, and it seems like Russia is out of the resources to keep it under control. So they went in, they were hoping for some sort of the huge assault operation, from what I understood, because what's the reason to go to Ukrainian Sumy Oblast? Just to get those villages and later on give them back to Ukraine. This situation is similar to the one happening in the northern region of Kharkiv. I expect it to happen like that. Russia has no major success in Sumy, and they will be forced to retreat little by little because they are mainly focused where in the eastern side of Ukraine, where the most action is ongoing. And a couple of more words I want to tell about Pokrovsk that I already mentioned the last year, that it is crucial for Donetsk region. It is very, very important. You know, some channels say, oh, this settlement is not important, that one as well, Bakhmut was not important, everything that is captured by Russia is not important, but no. This is the case of the very big logistic hub, and also it's the main crossroad, the key factor for Russia to advance further to the Dnipropetrovsk region. Now they attack from this side. After getting Pokrovsk, I think their ambition will go to Dnipropetrovsk region using this E50 road. I think that finally they will go here, because after all in the Dobropilya direction they have attempts to move, but they're not successful here, losing lots of the vehicles. So I think that the less resistance they would have to move on E50 road, especially then we know that the Ukrainian main defense line in Donbass is still not reached by Russia here. But also as the variant for them is to use this road towards Dobropilya, and from Dobropilya they might go to Kramatorsk. So because it's the major crossroad, Russians might go here to Pavlograd, Russians might go here to Kramatorsk, Russians might take this road and reinforce their group more to the southwest. By the way, we know that Russia even withdraws some of the forces to this direction. I mean vehicles, mostly artillery. In Pokrovsk itself, they operate with infantry backed up by Russian artillery, aviation. That's the main reason why Russia poured so many resources for this exact settlement. But Russia, it also has problems, especially with the new volunteers coming. It's not enough with the current losses they experience on the front lines. That's why I think that Putin will start massive mobilization once again. The order for the previous mobilization was not cancelled, which was back in 2022. Now they force young conscripts to sign contracts with the Russian army. That is how they're looking for the new meat for their attacks. Yeah, Putin doesn't want to announce a new mobilization, but he'll have to if he really wants to continue the war. But I think he will continue, because after getting Porkrovsk under control, he will be even more motivated. In Konstantinivka, Russia tries to use the same tactics as in Porkrovsk, but for now they don't have enough resources for this one. Their main priority is Porkrovsk, but here they have issues advancing from Chasiv Yar. Still, it is very complicated for them, but I see that in the future they'll be capable, after all, to go from Chasiv Yar and also advance from the south here, maybe from Stepanivka if they take it, but I'm not sure. Well, at least from two directions they might go to Konstantinivka. And that is where Russians will have the most losses in all of this agglomeration. Basically, it's the urban environment, goes from one side to another, very dense. The losses for Russians here could be astonishing, astronomical, uncomparable even to Bakhmut. Way more could be here. That's why Putin demanded for Ukraine to surrender this part of the territory, because it's the main defense line for Ukraine in general. Without it, there's simply an open way for the Russian army to reach Dnipro city, Pavlograd, Kharkiv. Yeah, basically this is what defends Ukraine. After it, Ukraine will not have enough resources to hold Russia as it holds it right now. So Putin wants somehow to collapse this front line, and he's sure that later on he'll be more successful. Maybe that's the main goal and the strategy of Russia. We'll see after Pokrovsk if Russians definitely could advance faster than usual. We'll see. And also Russians push in this direction, Dnipropetrovsk. As you see, there are no changes actually for today. Oh no, I see it. There are some of the changes. Russians move from Poltavka. Yeah, it is yesterday, it is today, and also they go in Novomykolaivka just a little. Here it is a big advancement, and you might see that in a less dense territory, Russians actually gain more ground. Here the main defense of Ukraine goes alongside this river. But actually Russians hit Ukrainian positions even in Pokrovsk. There is the bridge, I think it was destroyed. Let me check out some of the drone images. Yeah, this is Pokrovsk. Before Russians destroyed already this bridge, and now they operate with FPV drones. So this FPV drone was flying there, and there was the Ukrainian pickup truck. Yeah, I saw this video before. It was published today, and it was hit. Yeah, the supply vehicle quite far away from the front lines. Nevertheless, Russians operate with those fiber optic control drones, which they obtain. Components for those drones Russia obtains from China. And actually, everyone may order those kind of the fiber optic coils from China. Here's, for example, some sort of the TikTok channel. I got it in my recommendations somehow. And here we click on the video, I see a drone and coil, it goes, yeah. So depends what you need. You have 5-kilometer range, you have 10 more. I saw like 60 kilometers. They even sell 20 kilometers. This is the drone that flies with this coil, and judging on contacts, it's definitely China. And if there is a single shop like that, just imagine the massive production of those coils, of the drone parts, they are going to Russia mostly. For Ukraine, it is more complicated to purchase those tools. China makes it difficult. There should be some of the mediator companies established elsewhere, and they purchase the goods for Ukraine, later on transferring. So it complicates logistics. Russia obtains everything of that right away, including drone parts, absolutely everything. This is just a commercial company, I guess, but I'm sure that they're willing to sell their tools to everyone. This is 50 kilometers. Crazy. And what's the weight? By the way, those are Japanese language here on the weights. But I think after all, it's the Chinese manufacturer. Yeah, this company is from Hong Kong, China. Yeah, unfortunately, Ukraine was kind of late implementing the fiber drone production, but now Ukraine gains the momentum, and I know that there are also supply lines established for logistics for Ukraine to get those coils massively. It is must-have in a modern-day war because Russia also modernizes its anti-drone warfare. But because of this guy, I think Ukrainian drone army has vast perspectives. Magyar today announced the recruitment for Ukrainian army. Around 15,000 people are needed to operate drones. That's the big number. Well, I think that the best variant would be to hire those people who left their military bases voluntarily. They do it because of the bad attitude in some of the Ukrainian brigades. In many of those cases, they just don't want to fight any longer, but in some of the cases, they don't want to fight in particular brigade where the attitude is bad. So maybe they'll have one more chance to join, for example, drone army. I think it will be fair. Or maybe just new guys could be hired, but they need some time to get used to army in general and to controlling those drones. I think Magyar will look for the guys at least with some of the experience. Well, 15,000 is the big number, but at the same time, it's not that big. Ukraine needs more drone operators and more drones, of course, because it's the new era of war. And I'm very happy that Magyar is now in charge of Ukrainian drone army. It is very, very terrible for Russians. This video was filmed from the Leopard 2A4 tank. You can see a Russian Zhdun drone. Zhdun, it means it's holding on the road, waiting for some of the vehicle to appear, to fly and hit it. Well, here tank just run over it, no significant damage done to the tank, it just continued the movement. Those drops are elsewhere on the front lines. Ukraine does those as well as Russia. And as you can see, the weather itself is very wet. It's complicated to operate outside the main roads, and even the field roads, they're a little nasty. Russian motorcycle attacks are not that fast any longer, so by this time of the year, of course, the road control is very, very important. And again, the last night there was the massive attack on the Ukrainian infrastructure. First of all, energy infrastructure. Russians used even Kinjal hypersonic missiles, mostly drones, and also cruise missiles. There was also the strategic aviation in operation, so altogether there were more than 600 of the air targets from what I understood, which is a lot. Some of the cruise missiles penetrated even Moldovan airspace for some time and later on hit infrastructure in Ivano-Frankivsk. There are multiple of the blackouts. Also, there are blackouts in the central part of Ukraine. Zaporizhia was heavily attacked. It is a strategy of terror. By the way, Russians commenced this attack exactly at the moment then Donald Trump was speaking with Xi Jinping. About that meeting, well, Donald Trump said that it went very well, what else he could say potentially, but we are out of the particular details. Of course, they were speaking behind the curtains, as it should be, and no one would tell you what they spoke about. But Donald Trump said that they mentioned Ukraine, and it is one of the priorities of the current White House administration to finish this war. It is in a way good, but at the same time Donald Trump said that they were not speaking a lot about oil that China continued to purchase from Russia. I thought that maybe Trump could push China to purchase less of the oil, but we see that it is not happening. And after all, I personally think that Xi Jinping is more competent than Donald Trump. Yes, he is a dictator, he is a nasty guy, but he is more competent. I'm sure about it. So how to outplay Xi Jinping, I think Trump cannot do it. And for China in general, this war is very, very profitable. First of all, West is now mostly concentrated on Russia, and China may do its parallel game. Plus, because of the Russian fossil fuel market is so restricted, China is able to purchase gas and oil for way cheaper price. But that price is still okay more or less for Russia to maintain its economy. Also, in the current situation, China increased its influence on Russia, internal politics of Russia also. Russia is very dependent now on China, but China is not very dependent on Russia. China has alternates. Russia, no. And because of that, I don't think that China is really interested to finish this war. For this reason, they supply Russia with some of the intel, with products, even military, maybe even with lethal weaponry via North Korea. Well, I cannot prove it, I understand, but I think like that. I think China is very, very interested in supporting Russian army as well as the Russian economy for this war to last for years, years and years. This scenario is not good for Ukraine at all because Ukraine cannot sustain this kind of the long war without the adequate support from our allies. And yesterday evening, Donald Trump published this post. The United States has more nuclear weapons than any other country. Well, actually, on paper, Russia has more, but maybe America has more ICBMs and Russia more tactical nukes. Well, it's the question who has more of something. They're more or less equal 5,000 with something warheads for each country. In China, for now, there are 600 of those warheads. This was accomplished including a complete update and renovation of existing weapons during my first term in office, of course. He saved America for the first time and now he's saving it for the second time. Because of the tremendous destructive power, I hated to do it but had no choice. Russia is second and China is distant third, but will be even within 5 years. Well, in 5 years, China plans to have 1,000 of the warheads, which is still less, at least by 5 times less than Russia and the United States. Because of other countries' testing programs, I have instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on equal basis. That process will begin immediately. Thank you for your attention, blah blah blah. Well, even though China is mentioned here, but it is mainly a response to Russia, because Russia is so active with its Wunderwaffe, Burevestnik, and this some sort of the nuclear torpedo. Clearly, Donny doesn't like it. He understands it as the personal assault from his ex-friend Putin, and he wants to conduct the nuclear exercise, which is not kabooming the nuclear weapon itself, like those warheads. No, I think if he says equal basis, it means that there could be some of the ICBMs launched somewhere with a dummy nuclear warhead, but after all, I still think that Russia may do a real nuclear exercise, kabooming a nuclear bomb somewhere in Novaya Zemlya, far north of Russia, as Soviet Union did those exercises there regularly. So it's interesting rhetorics. It means that Russia totally failed with its diplomacy, with the White House administration that was very, very loyal to Putin's regime. Well, it seems like Putin has the talent to ruin relations even with people who like him. Oh, Russians are already scared, and Peskov reacted to the Trump's tweet saying that Burevestnik exercises were not nuclear ones. Okay, so when you launch the missile which was built to carry nuclear warhead only, and it has nuclear engine, isn't it a nuclear exercise? As well as this torpedo, how they call it, Poseidon. This name is already taken in Russia, but yeah, they call it Poseidon. Those exercises were just done to threaten America, but it didn't work for Russia. It backfired, actually, because American standard ICBMs are more than enough to erase Russia several times. Oh, interesting news from Bloomberg. Russian seaborne oil exports fall to lowest since 2022. Crazy. Those sanctions, they really work. Only diesel exports showed slight increase, while overall shipments declined due to reduced exports of fuel and oil and naphtha, particularly from Baltic ports following attacks on Ust-Luga hub. Poor weather conditions also played a role. So actually there are different reasons, or what? Bloomberg notes that new United States sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil have added uncertainty, forcing traders to delay deliveries and alter payment schemes. But it's just temporary, you know. They're looking to circumnavigate those new sanctions applied. That's why all the time, new sanctions are needed. Once in a couple of months, 3 months at least, new sanctions. And already I heard that Russians are looking to sell some of the actives of Lukoil and Rosneft abroad to some different companies to exclude those from sanctions. Meanwhile, Gazprom has reported losses of 170 billion rubles in the first 9 months of this year. A stunning collapse of what was once Russia's crown jewel. Yeah. But still, I'm not one of those YouTubers who say that Russia will collapse tomorrow. No, Russian economy is still big. They still have enough resources for many years. They have support from their allies. Those artillery shells from North Korea, they cost basically nothing. China is there also to support Russia in Russian economy. So at some certain level, they will survive, may survive for extensive period of time. Yeah, finally, it's certain that Russia, as well as usual empire, it will collapse, but it might take time. And the main thing for Ukraine is to sustain this war till that moment. And our allies should play better role in this case to support Ukraine, for Ukraine not to waste its resources and also army men, because now there is a big problem with motivated soldiers for Ukrainian army. I'm telling the things as they are, and I don't want to record a separate video on this topic on this channel, but I already filmed actually today the video about that particular topic, mobilization, this problem with Ukrainian soldiers who leave Ukrainian army voluntarily or desert, it's better to say. I'll publish it on my trash channel, and the link I'll post here. It will be some sort of the filter against Russian bots or pro-Russian trolls. Well, probably they'll still be out there, but I will try to filter. Guys, on this channel I want to tell the things how they are, because truth matters, especially nowadays. But after all, I am very happy that sanctions were applied by United States administration. I just hope for more action to support Ukraine and to cancel Russian economy. And there is some sort of the European peace plan introduced for Ukraine. It was made together with Ukraine itself. So it was ceasefire to begin within 24 hours, freezing of the current front line. Ukraine agrees on that, as you see. Monitoring begins immediately under the leadership of the United States. Ukraine and Russia agree on non-aggression pact. Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is transferred to the third party with the subsequent return of Ukraine. Lifting of symbolic sanctions against Russia. I don't know what does it mean. Agreement on the final line of contact to agreements on the management of the occupied territories by Russian Federation. Ukraine receives international security guarantees without details. What kind of the guarantees? Kyiv and Moscow strengthen mutual understanding and respect for the diversity of languages, cultures, and religions. Start of negotiations on the management of the occupied territories. Gradual lifting of sanctions against Russia as plan is implemented. Ukraine and Russia agree on compensation, and the West unfreezes asserts. Yeah, the great plan, as reliable as the Swiss watches, but the thing that Russia will never agree even partially on those terms. Yeah, Zelensky said about it already that Putin probably will not agree. Yeah, he will not agree on that, absolutely. He wants to continue the war. And, well, those steps, they are logical, and it's more or less a Korean scenario for Ukraine, but Putin feels that he may continue, so the war itself will be extended for unlimited period of time. My friends, again, thank you so much for your kind support on Patreon and also on membership of the channel. You may check the link in the video description below for my Patreon, or on membership you can check it over here somewhere, join button. If you don't have the opportunity to support me in that way, you may just press your like to this video and subscribe for the channel for YouTube algorithms to like this video and propel it elsewhere on the platform. So thank you for that as well. And my friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.